Hello again, adventurers, welcome back to our adventures in Serbian countryside. In this vlog we're gonna do some sprint mountain bike rides in Homolje mountains. Let's get started! As you can see, there are some nice forests in Homolje mountains. You can see there are a lot of big trees as well, but unfortunately the animal agriculture is a big threat to these forests, as well as illegal logging, so the big trees like this only survive in the more secluded areas. And many times when we go to explore these new forest roads, we want to connect to another road, but it ends up that we have to go back the same way because they are too overgrown. There is nothing better than finishing the day with a nice sunset in nature. Springtime is also great for picking up some fresh greens in nature, like nettles and some kind of chards, but you have to know how they look like. You can actually save quite a lot of money because they grow in abundance and are very tasty. And every time we go for walks, we see many of these abandoned fields that are just used for nothing. Much more beneficial would be to plant here some fruit trees or berries that do well here, like blackberries or raspberries. And over here we can see a clear example of deforestation for the animal agriculture industry, but most of this grass is actually just cut down and fed to animals directly. They're not actually here grazing because that way they can control how much they feed them. This is definitely a marketing scam where they're deceiving people thinking that the grass-fed animals are outside here eating grass, when in reality all these animals are locked down all year long in some dark farms and only fed these grasses that are grown here, and the deforestation and the destruction of the environment is insane. As I said before, 45% of all the land is dedicated to animal agriculture, either with the growing feed crops like corn or wheat or barley, or growing grasses like this. pretty distressing to think that this is the last refugee of forests in Serbia pretty much. These Homolje mountains and these eastern Serbian mountain ranges are pretty much the only forest that Serbia has left, only 30% of its area. And even here you can see these fields for growing corn or just grasses to feed the animals, and it's just getting worse. So hopefully people stop eating the animals and we can recover the forests. So as I mentioned before, the springtime is when it rains the most in Serbia, especially the late spring and beginning of summer, May and June, when you get these bigger thunderstorms, which reminds me of a rain season in tropics. Then on the other hand, you get extreme droughts in August and September when it almost doesn't rain. So the climate change is definitely to blame, especially the animal agriculture impact on it. Here we are going for a mountain bike ride near the village of Glozana, where you have a really nice nature going into the Homolje mountains following this amazing river. So the mountain biking in late spring is not as good as early spring because the roads become very muddy from all the rain, and some of the roads that were possible in the early spring are now overgrown with bushes. I feel the most connected to nature when I'm in a forest, and especially when there are fresh streams around with a clean water like this. Compare it to any town or village, it just goes to show how disconnected we become from nature. So now we got to the point where the road is basically going through the river, which we don't want to do because the river is quite big. So this might be doable maybe in a few months when it gets drier, but not now. We don't want to get too wet here, so we're just gonna return from here.
You wanna end? Was it real or just pretend? Tell me why do you wanna end? Was he really just a friend? No sign of you.
As I said before, we like to do different kind of adventure activities in nature, not just hiking. And mountain biking can be even more adventurous, especially when you have interesting terrain like this in front of you.
Was it real or just pretend? Tell me, why do you wanna end? Was he really just a friend? Cause it's plain in my head, every word that you said, I ain't worked it out yet. So why do you wanna end? Was it real or just pretend? You wanna end? Was it real or just pretend? Tell me, why do you wanna end?
So I think the nature around Kučevo and Homolje mountains is still beautiful in many places. The forests are still kind of preserved, but there is the big threat coming from the animal agriculture industry and also the illegal logging. So to help to preserve it, we should go vegan and try to protect the environment as much as we can. I hope you enjoy watching this video. Stay tuned for more adventures. And as always, stay healthy
And stay adventurous.